Monday. Welcome aboard, ladies and gentlemen. It's the 24th day of March, 2014, 32414. I'm your host for the next 2 hours, God willing, and the creek don't rise, Dr. Peter Glidden. Thanks for joining me for another Health Talk, live Health Talk radio program where we talk about everything that every doctor needs to talk about but nobody does. The relationship between science-based, clinically verified, holistic medical therapeutics and EU. This is the undiscovered territory that everybody needs to know about and nobody does. I was having Thai food with my sweetheart this weekend, a couple nights ago, at one of our favorite Thai restaurants around here. And there was a couple sitting behind us. They must have been in their late 30s, early 40s. And the entire dinner, this couple was talking back and forth. And I was like right next to them. So I was like a fly on the wall of their conversation, right? All they were talking about was the woman's father's relationship to his pharmaceutical meds, and how all of his meds needed to be color-coded, and how he never got the schedule right, and how he needed his hand held to take the 16 different meds that he had at exactly the right times, and they tried all these different solutions. They tried it. It was like it went on and on and on and on. The entire time they were there, they were talking about this one subject, and I had a little bit of a realization. When we're in the thick of it, like we are here with this radio show, and of course with my career, I've been rolling this stuff out for 25 years, right? I've been involved with holistic medicine for about 35 years, as a physician for 25 years, and it's just part of my nature. It's what I think about. I don't think about anything else. It's just my world. I walk through this world. These are the goggles that I see the world through. And it was startling to me that these people, number one, had no earthly idea whatsoever that there was a different way. And it just didn't. I had a kind of a cognitive disconnect for a moment. Because it really brought home to me in bold face the remarkable misinformation that the public at large has. The remarkable amounts of misinformation that the public at large have about science-based, clinically verified alternatives to drugs and surgery in the MD way. And, even if it isn't science-based and clinically verified, because not all medicine is. 65% of the stuff that MDs roll out isn't science-based or clinically verified. So medicine itself, anything holistic, is kind of way outside of the ken of most people, way outside of the ballpark. I mean, they had no understanding, number one, that her father didn't need to be on these meds, and number two, that there were actual solutions that could support and promote his health. But they had gotten used to this ridiculous regimen that he was on with his meds, and then more meds, and then more meds, and got to take your meds, and got to take pill A and pill B and pill C, and but got to take pill D before lunch. Make sure it's all color-coded. Make sure your wife, your sister, your daughter, whoever it is that's caretaking you at home, puts all the pills in the right canisters. Make sure she does that. It's nuts. But this is the world that most people are walking around in, which is why we have an easy job and a hard job both at the same time. It's easy because everybody is a candidate for our information. Everybody that's walking on planet Earth is a candidate for our information because nobody knows about it. Very, 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 very few people know about what we know. Everybody needs to know what we know. And the more that they know and the more that they try, the better that they feel. So the good news is that everybody in the world is your candidate. I mean, it's like going hunting on a game preserve where there's thousands of animals to pick from. It was like shooting fish in a barrel. The hard part is people have been so culturally conditioned by over 100 years of pharmaceutical profiteering propaganda that they can't hear it. They can't hear it. You might as well tell a slave owner that slaves are people too. Well, they're not going to hear that. They don't want to hear that. They know it's the truth, but they don't want to hear it. It's going to rock their worldview too much. People are too, intellectually cowardly to take that leap. It takes a generation to die off before new ideas are accepted, and this is the sticky wicket that we're in. This is the tricky situation that we're in. Everybody needs to know what we need to know, and nobody wants to know what we need to know. And, I was also thinking about this from the MD's point of view, right? We had a live chat this morning, which is part of one thing that I bring to the table here. If you visit my website, drglidden.com, that's drglidden.com, drglidden.com. If you can't remember that, just do a Google search, Dr. Glidden. Remember, Glidden like the paint. No relation. Just do a Google search for Dr. Peter Glidden, and I pop up number one all the time. It's good to be number one. You'll go right to my website. At my website, click on the little tab right at the top of the page that says Become an Insider. And there you will be given information about my online health subscription series that you can sign up for. It's $20 a month, cancel at any time. You'll have immediate access to 5+ hours of live webinars a week and hundreds of hours of archived health information available at the click of a mouse right now. You can have it right now. Just sign up. Check it out. So one of the things that's available for Dr. Glidden Insiders, for Dr. Glidden subscribers, is a live health chat. We had one this morning, worldwide health chat. We had over 83 people Monday morning at 10 o'clock. Now, you have to have some type of devotion to show up Monday morning. I was expecting maybe 15 people. We got over 80. This is how popular this message is, and this is the wildfire that's catching on here, but I digress. We had the live chat this morning, and I was thinking about this, that there was a peculiar disease, I think it was called squamous neurofibromatosis or some such thing like this. It's a very obscure, peculiar disease, right? And I thought to myself, well, son of a gun, if I'm a doctor, an MD, and, I've graduated medical school, and I've been around for a couple of years, and I think I know what's what, and someone walks into my office with a known diagnosis of some weird thing like this, even if it's a known diagnosis of something normal like heartburn or high blood pressure. It's easier to understand what I'm saying in the context of a peculiar disease, though, right? So they walk in with a definitive diagnosis of, neurofibromatosis, squamous, elephantitis, right? Whatever. And so what's the doctor going to do? What's the MD going to do? The MD is going to go to Wikipedia. The MD is going to go to Medline. The MD is going to go to whatever intellectual academic resource he or she has and look it up. And then the information that they read when they look it up is going to tell them what? It's going to tell them the party line. It's going to tell them the pharmaceutical understanding of this disease. It's going to tell them the allopathic reductionistic understanding of this disease. It's not going to tell them what this disease really is. It's going to tell them how the MDs have interpreted it, or more appropriately, how the pharmaceutical-backed research has interpreted this. And by the way, for every one pharmaceutical-based research paper that gets published, there are 17 that are thrown out because they don't support the notion that the drug actually helps this disease. So the pharmaceutical companies who do all of this in-house research will reject the research that doesn't support their drug, and they'll publish the research that does. They've cooked the books. This is a known fact in medicine, and quite frankly, I'm surprised the entire industry hasn't been taken over by the government. It should. But, the government and the pharmaceutical industries are in bed, hence the evolution and the existence of the Food and Drug Administration. The Food and Drug Administration isn't there to safeguard citizens' rights. The Food and Drug Administration is there to safeguard the pharmaceutical companies' rights. And there's a giant difference between the two, but I digress. So a medical doctor references some type of research that's been done by the pharmaceutical industry about this particular type of illness. And all they know is what they read, and all they read is through the pharmaceutical perspective. And so all that they know is what the pharmaceutical perspective has to say about this. But they believe, in their intellectual kind of, the way that they've been educated, in their intellectual, the education of an MD or any PhD is a meat grinder. So your mind doesn't become open, your mind becomes closed. So in the way that they were educated about this, they are of the belief that if they weren't taught it in medical school, or if the research isn't done in a particular way, it's simply not valid. So the information that they are going to bring to the table about this particular illness, they believe is the alpha and the omega, the beginning and the last, the be-all, end-all of information about this illness, and it's not. They don't know there's another way. Your medical doctor has no relationship, no knowledge whatsoever that high blood pressure is related to a calcium and magnesium deficiency. They're clueless about it. Your MD is clueless that heartburn is caused by a deficiency in stomach acid, not an excess. Your MD is clueless of the relationship between selenium deficiencies and fibromyalgia and cystic fibrosis and muscular dystrophy. They're completely clueless about it. As is the research that they read, because the research is only done based upon pharmacology. It's pharmacological research. It's not scientific research. It's one piece of the pie of science research that the MD misinterprets because of the way that they were educated and socialized into being everything. And they present it to you as such. You believe them, you suffer and die. Guess what? Fire your medical doctor now. Pick up the banner of holistic health and get it back. Taking your calls when we come back. Stick around. Welcome back, everybody. Dr. Peter Glidden here, March 24th, 2014. So this is how it goes, right? So your MD goes to 4 years of pre-med, and then they do 4 years of medical school, and then they do a 3 or a 4 year residency somewhere. After 12 years of a meat grinder and about $200,000-$300,000 of debt, now they are in the pocket. They are in the workforce, and they're going to do what they were taught to do, and what they were taught to do is reference medical journals exclusively. Who writes the medical journals? The pharmaceutical industry writes the medical journals, and the medical journals have devolved into information laundering machines for the pharmaceutical industry. It's not medicine that's practiced anymore. It's the delivery of drugs and pharmaceuticals. That's what's practiced. So the MD is taught, like a good boy and a good girl, to reference the stuff that's published in the mainline medical journals, but the mainline medical journals don't make any mention of anything other than drugs and surgery, and the information that they disseminate is lopsided. Because, like I said, for every one positive research paper, there are 15 that are negative and that don't get published, because it's all done in-house. They've completely cooked the books. And nobody holds their feet to the fire about this. Nobody holds their feet to the fire. And this is why we're in such a desperate situation here in the United States, why we're in such a desperate situation all around the world, because we've taken a lopsided dog to the hunt. He's the wrong dog to begin with, but the dog that we have taken to the hunt's got 2 legs. He's running around in circles, and we don't know any better. And it's interesting to me that the MD also doesn't know any better. I have to tell you, having been in conventional medical education for myself for 8 years, I can tell you that it is a meat grinder, and that it is the rare MD who's going to come out of that intact with even an iota of open-mindedness, able to conceptualize a thought that doesn't have to do with pharmaceuticals or the reductionistic method. And it's not really the pharmaceutical that's the thing here, it's the method with which they are applied. Because the medical doctor isn't trained how to cure anything. They're not trained to be concerned with the causative factor of disease. They're trained to deliver drugs to manage the problem. They're pharmacists who have been taught diagnostic techniques. Very few physicians left in the world. Dr. Wallach's one, I'm one. I know about 50 personally. But that's about it as far as I'm concerned. And I know that I don't know everything. So let's say there's maybe 200 others in the world. That's about 300. And that's an extremely liberal estimate. 300 actual physicians in the world who know what to do in order to attempt to get to the root cause of your problem. But you'll go to MDA and MDB and MDC, and MDA has a problem. He doesn't really understand what's going on. He's never heard of neurofibromatosis elephantitis exanthematous before. So he'll look it up online. It's all pharmaceutical centrist. He'll talk to his colleagues. It's all pharmaceutical centrist, and they all give him the same dog and pony show, the same cock and bull story, and they all believe it to be true. It's reality by consensus. I went to a naturopathic conference about a year and a half ago. And my head really exploded here. At a naturopathic conference, there was somebody standing up. He was a young kid. He was in his 20s. He was a PhD candidate, I think. I don't even think he had his PhD. And he was giving a lecture all about the wonders of chemotherapy to a naturopathic organization. And that's a whole other story. The naturopathic medical profession is rapidly sliding down a long slope into utter damnation because they have lost their way. But that on another show at another time. But this guy actually had the audacity to stand up in a room full of naturopaths and say that I asked him why he was so focused on chemotherapy, and he said, well, chemotherapy is the only thing that we know of that can cure cancer. I said, give me one example. He couldn't. But this is the way that these people think. Right? They think that because it's the majority is correct because it's the majority. The pharmaceutical companies are correct because they own the world. They've got more money than everybody else, so they must be correct. It's nonsense. But this is how these people think. And this is why you must do everything in your power to avoid them. Because the foundation, fundamental philosophy of healing that they bring to bear on understanding your condition is that you're screwed. You can't fix it. The best you can possibly do is manage it with drugs and suffer the side effects thereof. It's the blind leading the blind. Not anymore. Not here. I'm going to talk to Matt in Columbus when we come back. Stick around. Hey, everybody. Welcome back. If you'd like to give me a call, we have a new toll-free number, 844-374-5433. That's 844-374-5433. Check it out. Give me a call. Let me know what you are thinking about, as Matthew from Columbus did. Let's go to Matt and see what's happening. Hey, Matt, thanks for the call. You are live.
Hey, Dr. Glidden.
What's going on, Matthew?
Well, I was hearing the theme from Peter Gunn there. I've been watching
how about
that on
right?
TV lately. That's a great show.
Man, you got the prize for remembering what that is. You're showing your age now, Matthew.
We played that in orchestra way back in the 70s.
No kidding. What instrument do you play?
Cello.
Oh, very nice.
Yeah.
Boy, you got to love that.
Yeah, I want to get back to it. Yeah, that's one of my goals with longevity is to get the cash to have the time to take lessons.
Yeah, great. Well, cash is helpful, right?
Oh, yeah, very helpful. And time, once you get that time freedom.
Right.
So I see you finally saw my link that I shared to a YouTube video of Santana. Somebody made a video album of Abraxas.
Oh, yeah.
I think you had noticed that on your... You need to take a chance to check that out because I know you love Santana.
Boy, you got to love that, right? Have you ever seen Santana in concert? Isn't Santana and...
Yes.
Isn't he and Sting or somebody going on tour right now?
They're touring. They're going to be in Columbus. Now, I saw him back at the time of the Abraxas album. I saw him live here in Columbus.
Yeah.
Back in the 70s. Oh, it was incredible.
While we're on the subject, listen, it's Monday, and I don't care, and while we're on the subject, because it's tangentially relevant here in kind of a weird way. You know, I was born in the 50s and grew up in the 60s and the 70s, right? And back in the day, I am of the opinion that the music and the art was way better, way more kind of cut. I mean, there was so much more creativity back then than there is now. So much more. There was just a flood. I mean, think about all the groups that we still listen to today. That's when they all started. And what do you think? What's up with that? Why do you think that was?
I don't know. I think it was less commercialized back then. I think they wrote more from the heart. Nowadays, they know a formula. If I write to this formula, then my song's going to play on the radio.
Yeah, well, yeah. So there's the commercialization, right, that wasn't very present back then. I mean, it was starting to, but I think that's one piece of it. I think there's another piece of it that we overlook. I think it was the immense amount of psychedelic drugs that were at play back in those days.
That was me too. Yeah.
There was way more of it then than there is now. That was when Timothy Leary came to the forefront, and the CIA got their hands on it, and it's all gone downhill from then. I'm not an advocate of, ladies and gentlemen, of taking psychedelic drugs on a regular basis, but I'm telling you, back in the 60s and the 70s, it was everywhere all the time. And look at what happened with all of the music that we still listen to and that we love today came from those days, and what happened. Maybe I should be talking about this on Metaphysical Thursday, but here's what I think happens.
Yeah, Carlos Castaneda, too, and all the...
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
that's what a warrior wasn't a violent person.
That's right, a spiritual warrior. So, those medicinal substances, so to speak, opened up parts of the brain, parts of the mind, switched the channel of the mind to give people access to information that we don't normally have, and it's a big overlooked part of that culture back there. Now, there's a lot of stuff that happened back then culturally that I wasn't a fan of, and as Jackson Brown writes about, what about all of the dreams and hopes that people had in the 60s and 70s? I mean, there was a big, strong, heartfelt movement, and it vaporized. It just vaporized into nothingness. You got to wonder what was up with that. You got to wonder if there's going to be any fallout, and whether or not it was just the fretful dreams of some greater awakening. Time will tell. But that's not why you called, Matthew. How can I help?
No, it isn't. But I'd sure love to sit around and talk with you about that for maybe one of these times when you're somewhere around, I will get to do that. So now, a while back you had noticed and this is not really my main point I wanted to get to, but I wanted to run by this real quick. You had told somebody to stay away from potato chips because they were fried and go to Pringles. And I just saw on, I was looking it up because I wanted to see the ingredients, because I know they've got wheat starch in there. Do you have to worry about gluten with wheat starch?
Well, I'm not sure. I might have said go to Pringles in a kind of a tongue-in-cheek way. Right. What I meant was baked potatoes are fine. Mm-hmm. So there are these little things you can get. There's kind of like a cupcake, those little cupcake tins that you make cupcakes in. Well, you can get those for baked potatoes, and so you can make potato chips in the oven, baking them rather than on the stovetop frying them. Right. And they're delicious. And that's what a Pringles is. It's baked rather than fried. And, they put a lot of other crap in it as well. Yeah. So I'm not an advocate of Pringles, but there's a workaround.
Right. Yeah. And in general, though, wheat starch.
Yeah, I would stay away from it. Well, starch, we'd have to find out whether or not there's protein in the starch, because the only problem with wheat is the protein, the gluten.
The protein, right.
So if they've extracted, and I'm not sure off the top of my head, I would think that there would be very little protein, if any, in the starch. I'm going to say that that's okay. But I have to tell you that, when I first became gluten-free 4 years ago, I didn't think I had a problem with gluten. And I became gluten-free because Dr. Wallach said go gluten-free, and Dr. Wallach has forgotten more about medicine than anybody else, and when Wallach says jump, I say how high. So I went gluten-free, even though I didn't think I needed to. So the longer that I've been gluten-free, the more sensitive I become to gluten. And now if I even look at it, I'm hammered by it. I mean, my sweetheart and I were in Paris a couple of, 6 months ago, whatever, and we went out to lunch at this guy's house that we met there, and he prepared, it was breakfast, or no, it was brunch. He'd prepared this 5-course French meal with the French bread that the president of France gets, this one special bakery in Paris, right? He'd pedal there on his bicycle at 4 o'clock in the morning to get this bread, right? So I can't say no to this. We forgot to tell him that we didn't eat bread. So I ate bread. I'm going to be polite. I ate the bread, and I was hammered for 4 days. I mean, I was hammered.
Amazing. By
4 pieces of bread for 4 days. And the longer that I get away from it, the more of a problem that I have with it. And most people have the similar experience. But, the thing about wheat is the gluten that's in the wheat, and the gluten is the protein.
Right.
So if you can find a way to get that out of there, then you're good to go.
Now, my big question was, I was talking to my wife about this the other day, about diabetes, because years ago she had gestational diabetes with, the last child and all. And I was talking about chromium and vanadium deficiencies. But I've talked to some people about diabetes, and they say, well, I've got it taken care of with diet. Now, I see a disconnect there. Because if it truly is chromium and vanadium deficiency, and what I try to let them know is you're still having, I like your analogy where the way I kind of say it is, first the delivery guy comes to the door, bangs on the door, and the insulin, signals, and the chromium and vanadium opens the door and lets it in. But the more deficient you get, now you've got the police coming to the door, and finally the SWAT team is banging down the door, and that's how your cells get destroyed. Sure, right. The sugar's going to get in the cell. So if all you're doing is correcting with diet and you're not supplementing with chromium and vanadium, are you still subject to losing your feet, losing your eyesight, all those sorts of things?
Well, it's a good thing to talk about. Now, it gets a little more, this is where that particular metaphor breaks down, but I like how you think, all right? So it's kind of like this. When the body's healthy and its structure and function is optimized, and it's banging on all 90 cylinders, and it's working the way that nature and God intended it to, then you eat sugar, and it's like a 6-lane highway. You got all this sugar in the blood. It's racing through your blood. It's going to all of the cells in your body, and it's uptaken by all of the cells. Lickety-split. Everybody's happy. Thank you very much. Life is good. Now, you get pregnant. Now, you're nutritionally deficient anyway. Your body needs 90 essential nutrients. You have maybe 30, 40% of that, and then the baby steals what it can. So this is why gestational diabetes and postpartum depression and things like that develop, because the presence of the other body inside the mother's body completely wipes out her limited nutrient stores. But right. The MDs don't have any conceptual understanding of this whatsoever, and so they just think, that's life, and, pregnancy sucks, and, the body's not perfect, and here, take this drug and call me 9 months from now. It's like that. So now the mother is nutritionally deficient, extremely nutritionally deficient, and now she eats sugar, and insulin gets pumped out by the pancreas. Insulin goes to the cells of the body, but it can't, because there's a lack of vanadium and chromium. There still is some there, otherwise she'd be dead. Maybe only 20, 30, 40% of the cells open up, because there isn't that much vanadium and chromium to go around. So it's like that 6-lane highway going down to 2 lanes. Mm-hmm. So now the only way that the person can manage that situation is by reducing the amount of traffic on the highway. So they eat less sugar. They eat less carbohydrates, which gives their body less stress, because now the body only has a limited ability to metabolize that stuff efficiently. It can't metabolize 6 lanes of sugar anymore, but it can maybe handle 2. It can't metabolize 6 lanes, but it can handle 2. So you can manage it up to a point with dietary control, but it's only a matter of time until that fails as well. And when that fails, the whole thing's going to break down because, deficiencies don't fix themselves. Deficiencies get worse. You have to intervene. So with people managing blood sugars with diet, it's a stopgap thing. It's only a matter of time until those chickens come home to roost. Again, it's like painting over the mold in the basement without paying any attention at all to what's causing the water intrusion that caused the mold in the first place. It's just a matter of time until the system breaks down. So that's how that goes. It's an inefficiency. It's a decreasing efficiency of the body to be able to metabolize sugar. So instead of fixing the problem with the right mineral supplementation, the MDs just recommend eat less sugar. And that's nuts. Mm-hmm. And that's how they think, because they never...
Unfortunately, people think that they've got it under control.
I know, and this is what I was talking about at the beginning of the show. Everybody needs us, but nobody knows that they need us, and people rattle their prescription medications to celebrate their freedom. It's nuts. Thanks for the call, Matt. It's always a pleasure when you drop by. Boston's up next, folks. Let's go to Old Beantown and see what's happening out there. What's going on there, Cindy?
Hey, Dr. Glidden. How you doing?
Well, by jingles, I'm just as fine as Hogan's goat right now. Thanks for asking.
Yeah,
why don't you go down to Cumbies and get me a grinder and a Coke? Why don't you? See if they got any gluten-free grinders down there. I sure could use one right now.
I told you if I can park the car in the yard, I'm there. But I wanted to tell you, I left off with you that firing my MD, that happened because she didn't find my 7-millimeter calcification that was on my thyroid till a year later when I found it. Just brought it to their attention, and they, of course, wanted to send me for an ultrasound because now they're worried. So I foolishly went and did the ultrasound because usually I just don't do that. And I went, and it had grown another millimeter, so it was 8 millimeters, but I told her, this is it. I'm done with testing. They called me the next day. You got to get up. You need to see the endocrinologist. I said, oh, that sounds great. She said, yeah, it sounds very suspicious, what they saw. You need to get up there. So I went up there, met my husband, and she said to me, yeah, it did grow, but you have Hashimoto's, and the cells don't look good, she said. They look suspicious because of how they were jagged or something, and she explained the whole thing of if they were smooth, they wouldn't have to do anything, but because of the way it looked, they wanted a biopsy now, and she had everybody in place for me to do a biopsy, and I was just blown away. I said, I'm not ready for this. I said, no. I said, I'm not having a biopsy now. I need to just leave here, and I left. So I told her no to the biopsy, and here I am. I'm thinking, all in 24 hours that happened to me, and what do I do from here? Because I don't know. Oh, here's what she said. If they come out benign, which she wasn't in favor that they would, she said, either way, we got to take the thyroid out, because that's what she said, because of where these are and how they look. I don't want them going into your lymph nodes, and just speaking all this curse over me. And I just said, I'm out of here, and I left, and so I'm not going back there either. So here I am.
Okay, so you came into all of this with a previous diagnosis of Hashimoto's thyroiditis?
I didn't know I had Hashimoto's. I just was told I had a 7-millimeter calcification on my right lobe of my thyroid that I found on an X-ray to my neck from an injury that happened a year ago, and they put that in there, and they said, "Is this patient euthyroid?" That was down there, and it just stuck with me that was there. So when I brought it to their attention a year later, they said, "Well, you really should check that out. Let's just make sure it's not anything." They
okay. So when was the Hashimoto's thyroiditis diagnosed and brought to the table?
Wednesday when I went to get the ultrasound. Yeah.
Okay. So, well, you're in a sticky wicket. This is a real sticky wicket because first they're telling you it's a calcification. Now they're telling you it might not be a calcification, that it might be a tumor, and that they don't know whether it's benign, they don't know whether it's carcinogenic, they really don't know what the heck it was, and a year ago they were just absolutely positive that it was calcification, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's nuts. So you have a couple of options, and this is going to get a little dicey, a little tricky, but I'll tell you what I would do if this were me. But we're up against a hard break, Cindy from Boston. You're going to have to be patient and stick with me. Stick around.
Okay.
I'll pick you up at the very beginning of the next segment, which begins, by the way, for those of you in the listening audience, at 6 after the hour. Stick around, why don't you? I'm Dr. Peter Glidden. Today is March 24th, hour 2.